Hi everybody, welcome back to the 4th grade Gab Talks. I think it's really great to see that our attendance is still really crazy. We fill up the whole room, it's great. And here's Sofia introducing the first speaker.
Our first speaker today is known as someone who's not afraid to speak her mind. She's bold, dedicated to everything she does, and last but not least, she has a really great name. Please help me in welcoming Sofia Hussein.
Hi guys. So I'm Sofia Hussein and I'm a senior here at Gab. And okay. So I have this teammate named Katie Kratman. And yes, her last name is Kratman. Sometimes I call her Katie Crappy. And she once told me that I'm the most confident person that she knows. And when she told me this, I laughed because I spent so many years covering up part of what made me, me. Identity. When I hear the word identity, I think of all the things that define me as a person. Now, some of you may know this already, but a lot of you don't. And a lot of you are probably just seeing me for the very first time today. But, sorry. I have severe ADHD. No, this does not mean that sometimes when I'm walking down the street, I stop everything I'm doing and I yell, "Squirrel!" But it does mean that sometimes when you're talking to me, I hear you, but I'm not actually listening. And sometimes I might be looking straight at you, but I'm not actually looking at you. It also means that my memory retention is poor and I cannot focus to save my life. Some people might call me spacey. I started showing severe signs of ADHD when I was in the 1st grade, and this worried my parents because I was so young and teachers were already calling me hasty, or careless because my handwriting wasn't neat enough, or talkative because I spoke too fast. And by the 3rd grade, I was formally diagnosed with severe ADHD. Sometime later, the doctors prescribed me some medication to help fix the problem and make me normal. And I hated this medication. Not only did this medication make me completely miserable, but it was just another factor that made me different. And I didn't want to be different. I mean, I hated myself for it, and no kid ever wants to be that one kid that will never be like the rest. In fact, I hated this medication so much that I would actually pretend to take it. You see, what I would do was I would put it in my mouth, and instead of swallowing it, I would spit it into my drink, or I would save it in my mouth to spit it out later. And that worked for a while, until my teachers called my mom about my lack of focus in class. And at that point, my parents actually had to put the pill in my mouth for me, watch me swallow, and check my mouth to make sure I wouldn't be spitting it out later. Eventually, I gave up, and I took this medication every day, and every day, I suffered from it. I became the product of modern medicine. Now, this medication made me completely miserable. I would get dehydrated, I'd get so nauseous that I would throw up, and I'd get horrible migraines. This medication also made me extremely irritable, which would later affect my relationship with my parents and my friends. Now, fast forward a few years, and I'm a freshman in high school, and I just started playing at a new competitive volleyball club. And if I learned anything within my 1st year of playing, was that it's possible to be too focused. And that's what the medication was doing. I would overanalyze plays and I would get extremely anxious, and ultimately, my being too focused caused my failure as a player. And one day, I forgot to take my medication, and interestingly enough, I played significantly better at practice. And my coach noticed this, and he asked me what I did differently. I said nothing, but by my lack of focus and spaciness, he could tell I hadn't taken my medication that day. So he told me to try not to take it again tomorrow. And so I didn't. And for the first time in a really long time, I felt good. I didn't have any migraines, I wasn't nauseous, and I wasn't irritable. I felt genuinely happy. After that experience, I started to experiment without medication, and I eventually stopped the medication altogether. Because while the medication was helping me get straight A's in school, my quality of life was at an F, and I couldn't do it anymore. The thing about the medication was that it prevented me from discovering who I was. And when I stopped the medication, I had no clue who I was, and I finally had to figure myself out. The thing about the medication is that it alters the way your personality develops. People knew me for who I was when I was on the medication for all those years, not who I am now. After I stopped the medication, I became extremely insecure with my intelligence because school became that much harder. I knew the material, but I just couldn't perform well. And eventually, I knew that if I didn't get my grades back up to where they had been before I stopped the medication, there would be no way I'd get into a good college. So finally, I had to ask my counselor for help. Also, I forgot to change my slide. That's the cone of shame. It's kind of like the pill is like my cone of shame. I don't know. This is my new opportunity without my medicine. My whole slide's just Doug. I don't know if you guys can up, but I'm kind of like Doug. Anyways, so where was I? Okay, so I talked to my counselor, and my teachers were willing to help me and give me accommodations, such as making sure I stayed organized and making sure I had all my assignments written down, and they even offered to let me go into the pod to take my test so I wouldn't get distracted. And my teachers were being extremely generous with their accommodations, but I cared so much about what other people thought that I would refuse their help. In fact, I hated when they came and asked me if I wanted to sit in the pod because I was so afraid about what a girl next to me, whose last name I didn't even know, would think when my teacher asked me. People were trying to help me, but I wouldn't let them. Now, junior year of high school, I barely started to allow myself to accept any help. And regardless of the fact that I wasn't doing as well in school, I still wanted to challenge myself because I knew I was smart and I knew what I was capable of. I just couldn't perform well. So that year I took AP Lane. And while I loved that class, I barely spoke up because I was surrounded by such intelligent, confident people, and I was intimidated. And one day, I decided to speak up during a class discussion, and my teacher said that I made a really good point, and that the class should take note on it. And for the first time in a really long time, I felt good in a classroom environment. Up until somebody came up to me and said, "Wow, Sophia, you're actually smart?" And I had never felt so small. I mean, I purposely didn't speak up in that class to avoid judgment, and still my intellect was being picked on. I mean, I didn't understand. I was taking the same classes, I was getting the same grades, and it was taking me twice as long as everybody else. But if they thought I had nothing to show for it, then none of it mattered. Now, this school year, my senior year, I had to get retested for ADHD, and when my results came back, we were shocked. My working memory was in the 9th percentile. Basically, my ability to retain information was almost non-existent. That's why I have this, because I'm not really good at memorization. In fact, my test proctor was more shocked than I was because she told me I should be a D and F student and I was getting A's and B's. She told me that I should be proud of myself. But I was not proud of myself. I was disappointed. Because if I could achieve all of this without any help, what would high school have been like if I had just allowed myself the help that was given to me? So this year, I decided to ask for help. And when they gave it to me, I accepted it. Because I realized that in 4 years from now, I'm not going to care or even remember what people thought when my teachers gave me help. I realized that it's okay to ask for help. And it's okay to let people help you. And it's okay to be different. But it is not okay to question somebody's intelligence, because you do not know how smart they are, you do not know what they are going through, and you do not know the intelligent things that are going through their mind. You may be number 1 in the class and they could be in the bottom 10%, but they just might be the smartest person at the school, and you will never know since you judged them based off of how well they did in school. Because how well you do in school does not define you. Your grades do not define you. Your test scores do not define you. You define you. I have ADHD and I will not let it define me. I will define it. Thank you. That's my said that to me. And that's my happy ending.